Yes. So now we have a couple of questions, Tony, in the chat box. I'd like to read out because there are questions. I think we can begin with the latest one. This is by Amrita Ghosh. Amrita, would you like to ask the question yourself, or should I read it out?
Hello, Professor Stewart.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Purkast also. I was very fascinated by your talk. Thank you so much. And you mentioned, I was fascinated by the concept of syncretism. And you suggested the original meaning was things that do not hold together or that are disparate. And I work on partition, mainly partition literature. I'm a literary scholar. And I also work on Kashmir, where writers are looking back at this kind of desire for syncretism, and that, the subcontinent had always had a syncretic culture. Post-partition, things fall apart, or during partition, things fall apart. So would you explain to us, when does the shift happen, or at what point does syncretism change from its original meaning to meaning of togetherness and cultural composites and so on?
Yeah, originally, of course, it was designed to describe heresies, and of course that's automatically negative because you're believing the wrong things and you're doing the wrong things. I mean, that was the implication. But I'm glad you raised this, because today in South Asia, syncretism has a very different meaning than its original form, and syncretism is often offered as an alternative to the exclusivity of, say, Hindutva positions on the proper Hindu world, or certain very conservative Islamic positions on right governance and so forth. And syncretism then has been revalorized, but that is given new meaning as a positive alternative, which tends to bring together people, and it's seen then as something that calms. And of course, Kabir is almost always the paramount practitioner in many of these stories and the arguments about syncretism. So it has dramatically changed. But what Carl and I were doing, we were looking at the critics who use syncretism in a negative vein. And so in that sense, syncretism was a very bad word. And when somebody was accused, so then we thought, why is it bad? And it's because they had already presupposed it was bad, because they presupposed an identity that was exclusive. Muslims and Hindus don't belong together, so what are you doing by bringing them together? And so, this is wrong somehow, and it's not going to last. And then, so in that sense, syncretism had a very negative connotation. But here's where living with a historian and being around many historians, and I'm not a historian. I'm a historian of religions and a historian of literature. I'm reminded that we really have to pay attention to context, because what holds for 16th, 17th, 18th century is not necessarily our 19th and 20th, 21st century perspective. So yes, thank you for raising that. You're absolutely right to see that there was a major shift. And today, the word has been rehabilitated or revalorized, given new meaning.
Thank you so much.
Good, fantastic question.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, Professor Stewart, you have mentioned this point yourself at the end of the book, Witness to Marvels, where you mentioned your colleague Papia Ghosh,
Yes.
who did talk about this.
Oh, you're a very close reader if you remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, Papia Ghosh, and what a tragedy she is. But when she was resident in North Carolina, we spent a lot of time talking about these issues, and she was the one who first alerted me to that shift in the meaning of syncretism, and I thank her profusely for that.
Right, because I read one of the journal papers, or maybe a book, where I where I read that you were still being referred to and cited as a kind of a critique of the idea of syncretism, but then there is a need to kind of qualify that because you talked about it in a specific context, as you rightly
Yes.
mentioned now, but it's being used in a different way because in today's context of polarized India and the subcontinent, syncretism is being viewed as a kind of a counter narrative to resist the polarized narratives which are being imposed on us.
And
Yeah.
yet, if you read, if you look at Zaid Sultan's Nobi Bangsho, which was, lauded at the time it was written, today, no sort of mainstream Muslim will even consider looking at that book because it's syncretic. And so the negative version still holds as well as the positive attempt to counter those narratives. So here's where it depends on who's speaking very much.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Amrita, also for raising this important question. So